What should we do if we are being spiritually attacked? We're going to talk about this in terms of what is the meaning of spiritual attack, what is our mindset in all this, and three, what should we do in terms of a movement forward? What should we do about this? Okay, so the meaning of spiritual attack. One, it's actually something that just happens in being Christian. It's actually a normal thing if we're being followers of Jesus. It shouldn't be happening all that frequently. If it is, please come talk with me about that. But it's something that actually is fairly normal. It happens. And what is it exactly? Well, it's things or events not reducible purely to the psychological or physiological, but rather involve the demonic, our ancient foe. Now, certainly, because we're made up of body and soul, the demon or demonic activity can involve our psyche, our past behaviors, our history, our own traumas and wounds. But spiritual attacks are not reducible purely to those types of psychological or physiological things. They involve, demons can abuse things in us. So what might be some examples of spiritual attack be? Serious or sustained night terrors. Not just merely bad dreams, but night terrors. It's terrorizing you. It's of a different quality even than just a bad dream. And it could be even when you're awake but trying to get to sleep, there might be this really dark presence that's holding you down and you can't move. People experience this actually more often than you might think. And it almost feels like there's this great weight that is on top of them and oppressing them. That might be an example of a spiritual attack. The second type of spiritual attack might be images in our mind that are unprovoked or incommensurate with the circumstances. So someone is going to mass, just caring about their daily duties, and then no sooner do they enter the church and want to pray, that their mind is immediately filled with very terrible images of a violent or lustful or something just terrible. Like, where is this coming from? So that would be an example of images that are coming incommensurate with our circumstances. Like, where is this coming from? That could be an example of a spiritual attack. Finally, a third example could be voices or words in our head that is not merely from our own psyche, but something quite sinister and dark, and almost like from the outside coming in. Particularly very strong thoughts towards suicide, violence, etc. Like, where is this coming from? So that could be another example of spiritual attack. What should be our mindset? The first is, don't be surprised. St. Peter actually says in Scripture, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." It's like we should have not a casual attitude, but a little bit of a lightness and a sense of humor. Like, oh, this is actually normal. Anyone that wants to pursue God will experience the adversary or the devil, our ancient foe. So the first is, do not be surprised. Second, we want to be sober or sober-minded. St. Peter says in Scripture, "Be sober and alert. Your opponent, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." So to be sober means to be free from intoxicating influences. We don't want to have inordinate curiosity towards spiritual attacks or demons. We don't actually want to listen to a ton of talks or videos on them because, casually speaking, demons get royalties every time we mention them. We actually want our primary occupation to be thinking about the things of God. So we want to be sober about that it's real, but paying more attention to the things of God. Second way to be sober is just kind of acknowledging that spiritual attacks typically happen in three general areas: when we're in a place of real vulnerability, weakness, or being broken down. So think about when Jesus was spiritually attacked. 40 days in the desert, and he was very hungry. That's a vulnerable place. Jesus experienced spiritual attack when he was on the cross. "If you are the Son of God, come off that cross." And this would be a very vulnerable place. So spiritual attacks can come when we're in a vulnerable, weak, or very broken down state. So the enemy likes to go where we're weakest. Third place where we might experience spiritual attack, and we want to be sober-minded about this, is when I or anyone else is actively pursuing a life apart from God, especially through committing serious sins. All sins lead to the wages of sin, which is death. And sometimes when we're actively going away from God, God will allow us to experience the terrors of being spiritually attacked, to see our wayward ways and the fruits of it. Second place to be sober-minded, or third place to be sober-minded about where spiritual attacks can happen, is ironically when people are actively pursuing God and actually growing in holiness. Because the devil is often very threatened when we're growing in God. So not to be surprised, and to be sober-minded. Those are the two mindsets we should have. Third, final thing of like, well, what should our movement be if we're being spiritually attacked? What should we do about it? Well, the most important thing is we must go to God. That might sound ridiculously obvious, but Psalm 16 verse 8 says, "With God at my right hand, I shall not be disturbed." What's our instinct? That's what our right hand symbolizes. Is God becoming ever more so my instinct of when and if I'm being spiritually attacked, I'm truly going to God. I'm calling on God my Father. I'm calling on the name and the power of Jesus. I'm using the sacramentals, holy water, crucifix, Benedictine medal. These things help remind us to return to God quickly and often. So however spiritual attacks may come, hopefully they're not super frequent, but when and if they happen, our movement is always towards God. And we want to make God ever more so our instinct. I want to instinctually return to God, who is my source of power and hope. God bless you.